It's a shame, really. The original concept was so naive, almost childish. It needed a mature vision to make it viable. The words hung in the air, amplified by the conference hall's sound system. On stage, bathed in a perfect white spotlight, Zane looked out at the sea of faces, a portrait of magnanimous genius. His expression was one of gentle pity, aimed directly at me in the third row. The light caught the dust motes dancing around his head, like a cheap halo. My colleague Maya glanced at me, her face tight with second-hand fury. I didn't flinch. I just leaned over and whispered. He always did have a flair for fiction. Zane and I met at a 24-hour design studio 5 years ago, two ships passing in the 3 a.m. haze of caffeine and looming deadlines. We bonded over a shared obsession with minimalist typography and a ridiculously expensive brand of Japanese pour-over coffee. Real connection, though, came one night at a ramen bar, where the steam and noise gave us cover to dream big. On a flimsy paper napkin, we sketched out the first wireframe for Project Chimera, a revolutionary app for collaborative world building. The energy between us was electric, the kind that makes you believe you can build an empire from a soy sauce-stained drawing. That was our good memory. The first red flag came a month later. Zane gave a small presentation to a potential client and forgot to put my name on the title slide. He was so mortified, so effusively apologetic that I found myself comforting him. It was a rushed job, he'd said, his eyes wide with sincerity. My mistake, pen, completely. I believed him. It was easier than considering the alternative. The next 2 years were our golden period. We secured a modest development grant and set up shop in a trendy co-working space we couldn't really afford called The Hive. Our days were a blur of creation, fueled by overpriced sweet green salads and the thrill of building something from nothing. Filled entire walls of whiteboards with code architecture and user flow diagrams. But slowly, a subtle imbalance began to creep in. I was the one pulling the all-nighters, writing the thousands of lines of code that formed Chimera's backbone. Zane was the visionary, the one who handled the networking, which mostly consisted of long lunches with potential investors who never seemed to materialize. He started using the word "my" in emails when referring to the project. My vision, my platform. I told myself it was fine. He was the face, I was the engine. A partnership requires different roles. The shift happened on a Tuesday. Our shared Dropbox was full, so I started cleaning out old files. I stumbled upon a folder I didn't recognize, labeled Z Solo Pitch V4. My heart went cold. Inside was a pristine 30-page pitch deck for Chimera. My designs, my code architecture, my user research, but my name was nowhere. In its place under founder and chief architect was Zane's. The file was dated 6 weeks prior. He hadn't just been taking the credit in conversations, he had been actively, systemically erasing me. Confrontation was my first instinct, but a cold, quiet voice in my head stopped me. He would just lie. He would gaslight me, call me hysterical, and I had no concrete proof beyond a file he could claim was a misunderstanding. So I began my own project, an investigation. Installed a keylogger on my own laptop, which he frequently borrowed. I set up a rule in our shared email account to blind copy me on every message he sent. For 3 weeks, I gathered data, my stomach in a permanent knot. I watched him describe my work as his own to a dozen different people. I saw him register a new LLC, Chimera Innovations, with himself as the sole officer. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was a calculated, legal theft. The breaking point was that conference, the Innovators Spotlight panel. He had been invited to present Chimera as a breakout success story. Insisted I come to share in the moment. Our old mentor, Professor Yarrow, was in the front row. A key investor we had been courting for months, a sharp woman named Ms. Tanaka, was sitting right beside him. That's when he delivered his monologue. It's a shame, really. The original concept was so naive, almost childish. It needed a mature vision to make it viable. Penelope is a talented sketch artist, but she couldn't see the business side, the big picture. Had to carry it over the finish line. He was painting me as a well-meaning amateur he had to gently push aside for the sake of progress. The audience nodded, their faces full of sympathy for this brilliant man burdened by a less capable partner. In that moment, watching him lie so beautifully under the spotlight, my hurt froze into something hard and clear. The plan began. I noticed a tiny detail on the slide behind him, a graphic showing the evolution of our logo. It included a crude, clumsy-looking design labeled Penelope's original concept. I had never seen it before in my life. He hadn't just erased me. He'd fabricated a lesser version of me to make himself look better. That fake logo, I realized, was his first mistake. The day after the conference, I took my meticulously organized folder of evidence to a lawyer recommended by a friend. Her name was Veronica, and she had a no-nonsense demeanor and eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed the documents in silence for 20 minutes. When she finally looked up, her expression was grim. This isn't just a partnership dispute, Penelope. This is fraud. We spent the next 3 months and $12,500 of my rapidly dwindling savings preparing our attack. Veronica hired a digital forensics expert, Dr. Wallace, who dove into our shared server history. There were close calls. One evening, Zane cornered me in the office kitchen, his face a mask of concern. You've been so distant, he said. Is this about the conference? I know it's hard to see the project grow up, but you should be proud. I almost shattered, but I held his gaze and said, just working on something new. Needed some space. The evidence we compiled was irrefutable. We had timestamped Dropbox logs showing I created every core asset of Chimera. We had keylogger transcripts of Zane telling a friend via text he was phasing Penelope out. We had the fraudulent LLC filing. Even had a sworn affidavit from our former intern, Sam, who testified he'd only ever seen me working on the server-side code. But the master stroke came from Dr. Wallace. He analyzed the fake, naive logo Zane had presented on stage. The file's metadata was damning. It had been created on Zane's laptop the day before the conference. The original draft was created months after the final version. It was a lie forged in pixels. Veronica drafted the lawsuit. We needed the right moment to deploy it. The decoy presented itself a week later, an invitation, printed on thick cardstock, to a private launch party for Chimera at a chic downtown art gallery. Zane was hosting an exclusive showcase to close his $150,000 seed round. He'd invited me. It was the ultimate flex, the final twist of the knife. He wanted me there to witness his coronation. Gallery was all white walls, polished concrete floors, and pretentious sculptures. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. Zane was in the center of it all, holding court with Ms. Tanaka and a circle of investors. I waited for a pause in the conversation, then stepped forward. That's a fascinating story you tell about the project's origins, I said, my voice perfectly level. Zane turned, a condescending smile playing on his lips. Oh, Penelope, still thinking small, I see. He put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of patronizing ownership. I didn't move. I was just looking at your presentation files again. It's funny how the original logo file was created yesterday. The smile on his face didn't vanish, but it froze. Ms. Tanaka's eyes, sharp and intelligent, narrowed slightly. She took a half step back from him. Zane's hand dropped from my shoulder. He started to bluster to form a denial, but I kept going, my voice still quiet. Veronica has the full package. The Dropbox logs, the LLC filing, Sam's affidavit, the emails, everything. He's filing the injunction tomorrow morning to freeze the company's assets unless the wire transfer for the settlement is confirmed tonight. She's already CC'd your potential investors' legal teams on a preliminary notice. I slid a plain manila envelope from my clutch bag and handed it to him. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printout of the logo file's metadata, with the creation date highlighted in yellow. His face went slack, the color draining from it. Looked from the paper to my face, his eyes wide with panic. You wouldn't, I met his gaze. You thought my vision was naive. Let's see how you handle reality. The next 24 hours were a controlled explosion. Ms. Tanaka walked out of the gallery without a word. By sunrise, 2 tech blogs had the story, spun as a founder feud rocks promising startup. My phone buzzed with 47 missed calls from Zane and a dozen more from mutual acquaintances. I ignored them all. He settled before noon. LLC was dissolved, and a new one was formed with me as the 100% owner. The settlement covered my $85,000 in damages and legal fees, but his real losses were far greater. He wasn't just out of a company, he was a pariah. Professor Yarrow issued a public statement disavowing him. His funding evaporated. His reputation was incinerated. 6 months later, I was grabbing a coffee on my way to my new office, and I saw him. He was working as a barista at a generic chain, his shoulders slumped as he wiped down a sticky counter. He didn't see me. I relaunched Chimera 3 months after that, on my own terms. I work out of a small, bright studio overlooking the bay now, with a small, honest team. There's a quietness to my life I haven't felt in years, an earned peace. At our own launch party last month, a journalist asked me about the project's tumultuous beginnings. I smiled. The original concept was strong, I told her. It just needed an honest vision to make it viable. I finally carried it over the finish line.